Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next TMNT video. This is going to be my review for the first episode of the new show, Rise of the TMNT, which is called Mystic Mayhem. And more or less what I want to do with this video is review this first episode and explain why I won't be reviewing the rest of the show. When it came to the end of TMNT 2012, I said I was going to give this show a chance and check out the first episode or two-parter or whatever they did. In this case they chose to do one episode, which thankfully they did put up on YouTube to sort of promote it, which I actually appreciated. I said I would at the very least give it that chance, but I wasn't going to just default, before I'd even seen any of it, commit to reviewing the full thing. And after seeing the first episode, the main thing that I took away from it was that it's not for me. It's not the type of show that I feel is worth devoting all that time to doing these reviews. I can tell just from the first episode, based on the tone especially that they're taking, that it isn't going to be the type of show that I wanted. That this isn't the course correction from TMNT 2012 that I wanted, which was that, look, you have a nice tone, base level of who the characters are, you are just not plot focused enough. In terms of actually creating a proper story arc, incorporating character arcs into that, that's where TMNT 2012 was let down. And it only has, I think, a handful of really strong episodes. They course corrected with this show, okay, back to the 2D animation, which is fine, but they went even further in the opposite direction. And I'm coming at this from someone who, I don't really care about the original TMNT. The TMNT that I kind of like is the 2003 show, and I would at the very least say that I enjoyed the 2012 show without saying that it's heavily recommended. In that I don't really feel TMNT has ever had a show that has just kind of been completely mind-blowing or anything like that, on a level to match an Avatar, a Korra, that sort of thing. Even something like a Transformers Prime, I think, is a much better show than a lot of the TMNTs and stuff like that. So, it's not that I'm putting this show up against the standards of, craziness or anything like that. I don't even think most of the TMNT shows are, utterly amazing. I'm pretty much rating this show up against shows which I consider to be, at the base level, probably the 2003 show I consider to be pretty very good. For at least a couple of seasons it's at that level, and it kind of goes up and down a bit, but it had the plot, it had the characters. 2012 had all of the sort of materials, but never actually brought it together. This one, the main issues that I have would be that, I think at a base level 1, I do not like the character designs. When they first showed off screenshots of this show, I didn't like them then. In motion, I still don't like them. As much as I'll give the show credit for actually having fairly fluid 2D animation, it is let down by the art style. It feels like the opposite of the Dragon Prince. If you saw my review where my trailer analysis for the first Dragon Prince trailer, you'll note I gave the opposite criticism, basically, where I thought the art style was actually okay for that show, but it was let down by the kind of technical prowess of its animation. This is the reverse, where technically it seems like there's a lot of frames, the action looks dynamic, but I don't like kind of visually what I'm seeing on screen from the character designs and stuff like that. Because while they definitely make each of the turtles look unique, I think when you break it down into then what their characters are, because the show feels more comedic, all of the characters have to be comedic to some degree, and so that really limits what you can, I think, do with the characters. Because while I'll give the 2012 show credit for immediately starting off and it being very clear the base personalities of each of the turtles, they never really developed kind of beyond those initial traits. So I'm not one who's kind of stuck in stone where I need the turtles to always be this way. The problem here is that all of them feel relatively undefined. Mikey just kind of feels okay, he's he's the comedic one, but they're all the comedic one. Like Raph is making jokes, Donnie's making jokes, Leo's making jokes. So Mikey's kind of like thing, and he didn't even come across as too much of an idiot because it's comedy and they're going for sort of slapstick. That was sort of Mikey's thing as well. So he just kind of stands out as being like, he just feels kind of like normal because the others all have kind of something else. Plus they have Mikey's thing. You know, Donnie's design, I think they just went overboard with the tech, which again is like, okay, fine, that's his main trait, and they're going for like a mystic kind of theme to this show, and here is, you know, Donnie avoiding that by going more than the technical side of things. And even the switch of Raph to being the leader and Leo being more of the way they kind of set him up here is that like he is technically the most skilled of the turtles, but his attitude, I suppose, maybe holds him back. He's more of a kind of a hotshot type of a character, which again, that's fine. That gives some like progress there. It's just there was a moment like halfway through the episode where it's like, okay, the turtles are fairly like okay, and then the villain just notes how they're basically bumbling idiots. That they're ninjas, but they're bumbling idiots. And I'm just like, wait, so they have no training, basically? But they have all their weapons, but they aren't actually very skilled. Like, are you basically saying Splinter is incompetent? Which they sort of made him out to be, because he was just, like, asleep for the bit of the episode that we saw. And it's just this element of, like, look, I don't need my shows to be super, super serious, but I expect at least a baseline of, you can tell me what the basic plot is, what the character setup and stuff like that is, without needing to crack a joke to, you know, hold people's attention. And I think because of that, it felt like the show wasn't particularly confident in itself when it wasn't telling a joke. And that's my main reason, is just the tone of this show gives me no confidence going forward that this is going to improve on what I felt were the weaknesses of the 2012 show, which was a severe lack of a sort of ongoing plot, too much villain of the week stuff, not enough character progression or notable things happening. And it feels like this is going to be much more of the same, but even more like comedic, even more aimed at kids. And my take on the whole aiming things at kids is like, okay, but so much of that comes across as looking down on kids and not giving them enough credit to be able to actually, you know, interpret, follow what is most of the time just a fairly like basic story. Like Avatar gets praise for being this show that is like open to everyone, and it's got like a surprising amount of depth when you really look into it. But the base plot is not difficult to follow. The base plot of Avatar is very, very simple, but there is depth there, but it's depth that I think kids and adults can both get. Because I remember analysing the show when I was younger and still getting a lot of this, a lot of the details out of it. And I think it's a similar thing with even the show like this, where do you need to have like no plot and just focus on the comedy? No, you don't, because at the end of the day they're ninjas and you want them to do action, and creating the characters as like bumbling idiots is kind of like, okay, it's fun, but it doesn't actually like make the action all that good. So like it was interesting to see a different take of like, okay, here's this sort of mystical element where they go through this wormhole into basically this secret underground city underneath New York that is with all these other like species and has these like magical weapons, and that's where they get them from. And it was somewhat interesting to see them messing around with the magic weapons, and that's what gave them the advantage. But immediately taking away from the whole, I suppose, ninja skill aspect of that, and them just relying on the weapons, just felt a bit weak when it really came down to it. April didn't stand out all that much as a character because they basically had her just be like incredibly hyperactive and just charge into battle like biting things, and it was just like, okay, like I don't mind the character being different because April has been very, very different in a lot of iterations. But this was just like, okay, this is a bit over the top, in that like not even explaining like how they know her. Like, I get the first episode doesn't have to do the origin story in this universe, but would have appreciated some sort of a setup. But you know, it is what it is. You know, starting off with basically their first mission without needing to explain the backstory. Shows do that. That's fine. But yeah, that's my main takeaway from this, is that the main turn-offs for me would be, one, I don't like the character designs and the basic art style of the show, and while you can say, yo, I'll get used to it, I really don't like them, so I kind of don't want to watch anymore. That's how much I don't really like the art style. I don't think it's as bad as, like, say, the new Thundercats show and its art style, which I don't even want to discuss. But really didn't really appeal to me at all, the new art style. And then the tone. I think the tone and the lack of anything feeling like in any way like serious, that we're going to be able to like invest in these characters and we're going to have character arcs and a good plot. That all felt that it wasn't going to happen because the show took up a much more comedic road. And look, I've said on my channel before, I'm not the biggest fans of shows that have a overly excessive comedic aspect to them, because I feel it ends up just kind of taking over the whole show. I prefer the comedy to just kind of come in naturally through the characters and not be like forced, where every character has to crack jokes every like 5 minutes. And like, I'm okay with like them devoting like a portion of an episode to having like comedic moments, but here it was excessive. It was like every single scene had to have some sort of a, you know, wisecrack or something like that. And because it was coming from every character and not just one, like say like most of the comedic stuff in Avatar comes through Sokka, and then it's actually fun when some of the other characters maybe once in a while say something, and you have that kind of contrast because one character has this style of personality as opposed to here where basically all of them do. And I don't think it's quite Sonic Boom levels of like, they're just making this a like TMNT sitcom, like Sonic Boom is basically, where the key traits of all the characters are just missing more or less because it's just meant to have some kind of fun comedy moments. I think this show will eventually get a plot, will eventually have character arcs, but I don't want to sit here and review the episodes waiting to get there. I feel I gave TMNT 2012 far too much of a chance to finally impress me, and in the end I kind of felt like, as much as like I'm critical of the show and the way it ended, I kind of almost wish that like I was glad in a way that the show was over, even if it ended in not a particularly strong way, just because this is taking up so much of my time trying to complete my coverage of this show that hasn't really, over the course of its run, impressed me a massive amount outside of like a handful of episodes. And I don't want to get into that because I can see this being the case. Maybe I'll think about reviewing it again if, when the show comes out fully in September and we get more episodes and people are saying it's really, really good. But I think one episode, it's a small amount to base my opinions off, but given that like I'm basically making a decision about like, should I review the whole show, commit to making like, I think at this point potentially like 52 videos, because I think it is confirmed to get a second season already. That's a large commitment to make based, you know, at this point. And so right now I'm kind of like, the show as it is gives me no reason to warrant committing anything more than this initial video to it. So in the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on the first episode of TMNT, Rise of the TMNT. It's the episode is linked in the description below. It is actually just on YouTube, so anyone can watch it. And let me know what your thoughts are and what I had to say about it here. And I suppose, would you want me to review it, or because I don't particularly like it, do you not want me to review it? You know, I want to see what you guys think about what I had to say. But yeah, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.